Before we get into Brian Schottenheimer's reaction, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because we're covering the biggest Cowboys and NFL stories all season long. Brian Schottenheimer had plenty to talk about after the Cowboys walked away with a 17-7 win over the Seattle Seahawks. And even though this was only preseason football, Schottenheimer clearly saw things he liked, especially from some of the younger players who were given a chance to prove themselves. Dallas entered this game without several of its biggest defensive stars, which made the performance of the backups even more important. Sam Howell got valuable reps at quarterback, while Joe Milton also had an opportunity to show what he could bring to this offense. But one of the biggest stories was wide receiver Camden Brown. Brown finished the game with 3 catches for 62 yards and 2 touchdowns, giving the coaching staff plenty to think about. And that leads to one of the biggest questions coming out of Seattle. Could Brown actually earn himself a bigger role? Schottenheimer has to evaluate every single snap during preseason, and performances like this can change how coaches look at a young player. The Cowboys weren't just trying to win the game. They were trying to find out who could be trusted when the regular season arrives. And that's where this win becomes more important than the final score. Schottenheimer also has to like what he saw from the offense, considering Dallas was missing players like Dak Prescott and CeeDe Lamb. The Cowboys still found ways to move the football, create explosive plays, and put points on the board. But there's another part of the performance that could be even more important. The Cowboys' defense held Seattle to just 7 points. That gave Dallas a chance to control the game without needing its starters to carry the offense. For Schottenheimer, that kind of balance is exactly what you want to see during the prees. Schottenheimer also had to pay close attention to the way Dallas handled the game from start to finish. With so many starters watching from the sideline, the younger players had to communicate, execute the game plan, and avoid giving Seattle easy opportunities. That is one of the biggest reasons preseason games matter to a coaching staff. The final score gets attention, but coaches are watching much more than that. They're looking at assignments, effort, decision-making, communication, and how players respond when something goes wrong. For Schottenheimer, every snap is another piece of information. And one area that stood out was the quarterback competition for the players behind Dak Prescott. Sam Howell showed why the Cowboys brought him in, while Joe Milton continued getting valuable experience in the system. Neither player is expected to replace Dak when the regular season begins, but their development still matters. If the Cowboys need one of them during the season, they want that player to already understand the offense and feel comfortable making decisions under pressure. The same thing applies to the wide receiver room. Camden Brown's performance against Seattle gave him an opportunity to separate himself from the competition. 2 touchdowns in one game will always get attention, but Schottenheimer and the coaching staff will want to see whether he can repeat that level of performance. One good preseason game can open the door. Consistent practices and more strong performances can keep that door open. And that's where the next part of the preseason becomes important. The Cowboys have to figure out which young players can contribute immediately and which players still need more development. Schottenheimer also has to balance evaluation with preparation. At some point, the focus shifts away from experimenting with the roster and toward preparing the starters for the regular season. That means getting Dak Prescott comfortable with the offense. Another thing Schottenheimer will be looking at is how quickly these players can adapt when the situation changes. In the regular season, defenses are going to disguise coverages, change pressures, and force quarterbacks to make decisions much faster. That makes preseason repetitions extremely valuable for players who are still learning the Cowboys system. The coaching staff can also use these games to identify which players understand their assignments without needing constant reminders. A talented player can make a spectacular play, but coaches also need players who can execute the basic details consistently. That could be especially important at wide receiver. Brown's 2-touchdown performance got plenty of attention, but Schottenheimer will want to see how he performs when defenses make adjustments. Can he create separation against different coverages? Can he block effectively? Can he make the right reads when the play breaks down? Those details could determine whether a young receiver earns meaningful snaps once the regular season begins. The same evaluation is happening across the Cowboys roster. Running backs are competing for opportunities, offensive linemen are fighting for positions, and defensive players are trying to prove they can be trusted when the pressure increases. For Schottenheimer, that creates a difficult balancing act. He has to give young players enough opportunities to evaluate them, while also making sure the team's overall structure continues moving forward. And eventually, the attention will shift toward the starters. Dak Prescott will need to build chemistry with his receivers. CeeDe Lamb will need to get back into the rhythm of the offense. George Pickens will need to understand exactly how Schottenheimer plans to use him. That chemistry could become one of the most important storylines for Dallas. The Cowboys have talented individual players, but talent alone doesn't guarantee success. The offense has to operate together, ESP. The next part of Schottenheimer's evaluation will be about consistency, because one strong performance is never enough to guarantee a player a role on an NFL roster. The Cowboys need players who can perform week after week, especially when injuries start affecting the lineup during the regular season. That is why the coaching staff will continue watching how these young players respond to different situations. A player might look great when everything goes according to plan, but the real test comes when the offense faces pressure, falls behind, or has to convert a third down late in the game. Those are the moments Schottenheimer needs to see. The Cowboys also have to continue developing their offensive identity. With Dak Prescott leading the offense and weapons like CeeDe Lamb and George Pickens available, Schottenheimer has plenty of talent to work with. But having talented players is only part of the equation. The offense needs to have an identity that allows those players to make plays without becoming predictable. That means mixing formations, changing personnel, creating movement before the snap, and finding ways to get the football into the hands of the best playmakers. CeeDe Lamb can move around the formation, and that gives Schottenheimer more options when designing the passing game. George Pickens can stretch the field vertically, while other receivers can take advantage of the space created by defensive attention. The running game will also be important because Dallas can't expect the passing attack to carry the team every single week. If the Cowboys can run the football effectively, it could force defenses to respect multiple areas of the offense at the same time. That could create easier passing opportunities for Prescott and give Lamb more favorable matchups. The Seattle game also gave the coaching staff another chance to evaluate the offensive line. Protection will be critical once the regular season begins because everything starts with. At the end of the day, the Cowboys' win over Seattle gave Brian Schottenheimer exactly what he needed: more information. He got to see young players compete, quarterbacks take meaningful reps, and the offense find ways to score without several of its biggest stars. But the real test is still ahead. Once Dak Prescott, CeeDe Lamb, and the rest of the starters return, Schottenheimer will have to turn all of these preseason lessons into a complete offensive system. The goal isn't just to win preseason games. It's to build an offense that can compete when every possession matters. And if the young players continue developing while the stars get healthy, Dallas could have some serious options heading into the regular season. So Cowboys fans, keep watching, because the decisions being made right now could shape the entire season. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next Cowboys and NFL update. We'll keep you posted on every major reaction, roster move, and storyline coming out of Dallas.